Hello everyone and welcome to our seminar From Single to Mingle in just under 30 seconds, the how-tos in deciphering the dating code. For many of viewers today and to our live audience, attendees, you probably came across my TV show, The Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan, a TV program that provides opportunities for local authors in the DMV area to share their journey to getting published and on their way to becoming bestsellers. We all have a different definition to what happiness means to all of us, individually speaking. And this is one of the reasons why we decided to create seminars about dating and relationships. Most humans on earth are looking to find their soulmate in the hope of living a happy life. So here we are giving you the right tools to make all this happen. Our first seminar, the main topic was learning to communicate better with your date or mate. This seminar is covering the do's and don'ts about online and offline dating. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's seminar. I have a doctorate degree in organizational leadership and communication with a minor in quantum physics. Yes, I know there's no real correlation with this seminar. I'm also a practicing therapist covering issues such as self-esteem, weight and anger management, and also do marital and relationship counseling. I do individual and group therapy as well. For more information, you can contact me on the number below. Now, the program today will be a two-part interactive seminar of 50 minutes each, in which the audience asks questions to our guest panelists as we are conducting the seminar. Again, welcome all to the seminar series From Single to Mingle, just under 30 seconds. Now, I'm going to ask each and every of our panelists to introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Tilson. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in private practice for over 15 years. I also specialize in dating coaching and matchmaking. Our company is called the Match Pro. We are a professional upscale matchmaking company that's very holistic, that specializes in helping people find their life partner.
Excellent. Thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Mr. Dave.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My name is David Elliott. I'm a relationship coach. I work with clients all over the world, basically through Skype. I help a lot of my clients are really high-performing women doing amazing things in every area of their lives. They struggle in the area of relationships, and so that's the area that I help them with. And one of the primary things that I do is help them understand men at a much better level in order to bring out the very best in them rather than suffer through the worst from them. And so I work with couples and singles, and I have a book on online dating as well and how to write a phenomenal profile.
You said understand men isn't supposed to be the opposite, understanding women?
I think there's plenty of room for misunderstanding on both sides of the aisle, and
Okay.
I kind of help with that as well.
Perfect. Erica?
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Erica Etten, and I have a business called A Little Nudge, where I help people with all aspects of online dating. So the way I see it, there are two major obstacles to online dating. It's hard to write about yourself, and it's time consuming. So I started my business to help people through both of those obstacles and all of them. So writing your profile, choosing your picture, helping you market yourself, and then saving time by searching, emailing, scheduling your dates. I also do date coaching to help people through that hurdle of basically first click to first date, really getting out there.
Excellent.
So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for all three of you for being here today. Now also, we have a live audience in which we will have interactive seminars, so they will get up, ask questions to all of our guest panelists in case they don't really agree on what they're saying. So there's no really order in which I'm going to ask question, and like I said, if any of you want to add more to what the other professionals have mentioned, please feel free to do so. So Erica,
Yes?
now how many online dating sites or apps should you use when it comes to starting, like, venturing into the online dating?
How many online dating sites or apps should you use? So there's no right answer. So my background's actually in economics, so I try to make everything as much science as I possibly can, but the reality of it is this is not a science, it's an art. My recommendation, though, is two online dating sites or apps. It wouldn't hurt to do a paid site, so like a Match.com or an eHarmony or something like that where you pay for it because you know that people are somewhat invested in the process, at least invested enough to have put their credit card, at least invested enough to have a credit card. And then for the other site, it really depends on what you're looking for. If, for example, a particular religion is important to you, I like the niche sites like the JDate, Christian Mingle, Catholic Match. If you're a bit younger, and when I say younger, I don't know what I mean, under 40, a lot of the dating apps, Tinder, Hinge, they get a bad reputation as being hookup sites, but in reality, you can use them for whatever you want. They could be relationship apps, they could be hookup apps, they could be just meeting a nice person for a Sunday coffee apps. So I'd recommend 2, no more than that, because sometimes you know how too many cooks in the kitchen, sometimes you do too many things, and because you're spread so thin, you don't do any of them very well. So 2's my magic number.
Excellent. When it comes to meeting someone on the first date, what should you do to be able to guarantee the second one?
Well, you obviously want to come in with a positive attitude. You want to bring your best self forward. So you want to look good. You want to dress appropriately for the occasion. So if it's a coffee date, you don't want to come in high heels and a black tie dress. It would look silly. So you want to dress appropriately. You want to feel comfortable in what you're wearing. You want to look good, and you want to come across confident. It's important to have really good body language, and that means walking in with good posture, having good eye contact, smiling, and you also want to be very interested in what is this person telling me. You want to really get to know them. You don't want to just sit and talk about yourself, but you want to be clear about what kind of person you're looking for. If you know you want to get married, you don't want to scare the person, but you don't want to waste time either. So you do want to tell them your intention so that you're not 10 dates in saying, oh yeah, by the way, I want to get married and I want to have kids, to find out that that's not what they want. So you want to be clear. You also don't want to tell them everything. You know, as much as you want to be clear about your goal, you don't need to tell them about every relationship you've been in. You don't need to tell them extremely personal information for safety reasons. You want to be careful about that. You want to be a little bit alluring, a little bit mysterious, so that they get a little bit sample of you and they want to get to know you more. So you want to entice them. You want to, have a very good presentation, but you want to be careful about how much you reveal. And that's about your professional life, your personal life. You never give out personal information, okay? Because there are scams out there and you don't know who to trust, no matter how they come across. Okay. But you want to, if you had a good first date, you want to let them know at the end of the date that you had a good first date. You want to give that positive reinforcement. You want to let them know so that if they feel the same way, hopefully you will make it to that second date. You don't want to overdo it. You never want to look too desperate, too needy, too eager. To me, that's a huge turnoff.
So the 3-day rule before you text the woman after the first date, that does not apply?
No, I think it's good to text the man or woman after the first date, but you don't want to, text them 10 times within 20, you want to pace it out. You want to be very aware of the pace, because being needy and look is usually a very big turnoff. People still like that challenge. They like to see that you're good on your own, you're independent, you're happy, and if they're the right person, that's a plus.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Now, Dave, when it comes, you mentioned something in your introduction about understanding men.
Yes.
Why don't you elaborate on that? Isn't women who are very much more complicated to be able to be understood versus men? I mean, if you give the remote control to a man, you cook for him, he's happy. But for the women, it's a bit different, isn't it?
Are we cavemen here?
No, I'm just saying that, I've read like so many different, psychological books about that. Actually, I'm writing another book about how to understand women, but please tell me more about the understanding men part.
Well, I think your question is actually sort of about the answer as well. So a lot of my clients, because they tend to be women, I help them understand men, and I think that the inclination is that a lot of times we tend to think other people think like we do across gender lines. And so if you're expecting a man to think like a woman, then that would be a problem. And so what I do is I try to bridge the gap and give them a little bit better understanding about how the masculine mindset works. And I talk about masculine energy and feminine energy, how we interact differently, how we communicate differently, what we need is differently, what we don't want is different. So I really kind of try to bring those things into play. And common sense is not common practice in a lot of ways, and it's no offense, but I think we just don't know. So what I do is I just help people communicate a lot more effectively about what you were saying as well about what do you want to put out there and how it comes back. And so it's really understanding what people need to to be successful in this area of relationships. So
Do you give them specific tools or kind of like a guide that they will have to follow to be able to, get to understanding a little bit better? Or when you talk about communication, what specific part of communication do you emphasize on?
So it's about communication style. So it talks about like a particular I guess a question that I would get a lot is like for a man, if you ask him how his day was and he says fine, in his mind that's a fully complete conversation. And there would be some level of conflict or misunderstanding. Like, but if you ask a woman how was your day, well then you're going to go into much more of a story, because it's really about it's how they connect, and women connect in order to feel safe. And so they tell their story and they share their story, and it's how she feels safe. But a man, he doesn't necessarily have that need to feel safe, because he already does, presumably because he's a hunter rather than gatherer energy. So it's really about understanding those things and understanding that people aren't misbehaving. They behave differently.
Correct.
And so no one's wrong, no one's broken. It's all good, but when you understand how both people are wired to behave and what they need, people just perform at a lot better level.
Do you guys do you give any suggestion when it comes to the 5 love languages from Chapman? Do you guys, when it comes to the 5 love languages of Gary Chapman, do you guys try to help people understand what is the love language of the other person, so they could properly communicate and they know exactly what to emphasize more, either the words of affirmation or gifts or spending more time with them, quality time? Do you mention anything of that when you coach your clients?
I talk about that in couples counseling all the time, as well as with my matchmaking clients. It's really important for each of us to know about ourselves what makes us feel loved, what makes us feel really good inside, so that we can let our date or our partner know what that love language is, and they can fill up our love tank quicker, because a lot of times we unintentionally speak the wrong love language. Like, you could be sending your girlfriend flowers, she may think that's very thoughtful, but she would much rather spend time with you because that's her love language. So you're missing the boat. So it's really important for each of us to be aware of what our love language is, so that we can express that to our partner, our date, our spouse, and also be aware of what their love language is, so we can connect more fully.
Okay, excellent. Erica, do you have anything when it comes to sharing those point of view?
I was actually going to piggyback off of what Dave was saying with clients. I often find that clients assume things about the other person. Like you said, just because they do it a certain way, they expect somebody else to. And I find myself daily saying to clients, men and women, we're not mind readers. Because people fill in the gaps with information, usually negative information, when they don't know. So for example, as a really good example, a female client I'm working with right now, she has a young child, so she doesn't have time for all of this banter before a date. She just wants to connect, meet immediately. That's the mindset I have too as a coach. I think you cannot determine chemistry until you meet in person, so I want my clients to get out there quicker. These men are wanting to communicate a bit more online, more than she would like. And she said to me, they must have no interest in meeting me. I don't know why, they're just looking for pen pals. And I said to her, perhaps the last person he was with wanted more communication before. So he's just basing it on what he knows. Don't assume things. He doesn't know what's appropriate, and he's not a mind reader. You have to actually tell people what you want. So I think that's very similar to what you were saying, that you kind of have to rewire yourself for every different situation.
Okay, well, that's a very good point. Now, when it comes to online profile, what would you recommend or suggest to your clients, or what they should emphasize on when it comes to describing themselves? Too much? Too little?
How long do we have? Because I could talk about this all day. So the main problem with online dating profiles is that they're so generic. I love to laugh and have fun. I'm just as comfortable in a little black dress as I am jeans and a t-shirt. I love to travel. My family and friends are so important to me. We have a live audience. If that describes you, raise your hand.
Yes.
Everybody, right? So I say let your quirks shine. Whatever makes you you is what people want to know. Because the baseline is that you love your family, right? The baseline is that you're capable of putting on a dress or a tux, and you're capable of putting on jeans. I want to know what's not the baseline. The baseline is you like your friends, whoop-de-doo, right? I want to know that you enjoy going to NASCAR races, or you like Rocky Road ice cream, or it may sound trivial, like that doesn't matter in real life, you know, in the long term what my hobbies are. No. But the purpose of the online dating profile is not to share your life story. It's to generate enough interest for someone to either write to you or to write back to you. So I call it all message bait. Everything you write, every picture you choose is providing message bait to somebody. If I put in my profile that I love puns, for example, which I do, someone knows that immediately when they read about me. I'm not a sarcastic person. I prefer cheesy humor. Or that I like trivia night. You know, that's something for someone to go off of. Oh, what's your favorite topic, or what's your specialty topic? And then we can have a conversation. Does that make that partner a lifetime, you know, great mate? I have no clue, but it gets us to the first step. So it's really letting your differences shine.
So if someone says, I like Pokemon Go, you just delete them.
Well, that's everybody now.
Okay.
Everyone loves Pokemon Go. It's ridiculous. I downloaded it because I was
Oh, you did?
curious.
Okay.
After 10 minutes, I was like, I can't take this anymore. I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, I see so many stories about that. Now, when it comes to the second date, Tammy,
Right.
what should the person not do to be able to, like, if they're interested in that person, like we mentioned about being too needy or not showing too much interest too quickly, but yet still being appreciated for the time that they spent with you during that first date.
Right.
So what they should not do to be able to guarantee
Well,
the second
again,
date.
you don't want to dwell on your past relationships. First of all, it's boring and it's negative. It's that negative energy, and everybody's got their story, but it's not the time. It's too early in the process to start sharing about, you know, past marriages or relationships, or even sharing like really personal problems. I mean, it's okay to be real and to be genuine about, you know, what you're doing in your life. You just want to be, you know, be careful about digging up the past and not make it a therapy session, because otherwise it creates a negative energy, and then most likely your date feels maybe they need to share something negative about themselves. They may not be comfortable with that. So you want to, again, always keep it on a positive note, but what you can do is you can scratch a little bit beneath the surface. So if the person says, yeah, I'm an attorney, and I'm in private practice, okay, what do you specialize in? Okay, well, you know, do you go to court a lot? What's your typical client like? So, you know, those are safe. You want to stay with the safe topics. You don't necessarily want to say, well, why didn't your marriage work out?
What do you recommend saying, though, if someone asks that? Because I get that question all the time. What do you like if you're on a second date and that person's saying, so tell me about your divorce, and you don't want to, what do you recommend
I
that they
think
say?
you just tell, you know, you just say, you know, I would like to share that, but I'm not comfortable sharing that right now.
Yeah.
I'm just getting to know you, so nothing personal. I just rather talk about what's going on right now in our life. You know, I want to be focused on the present.
That's similar to what I say, because that's a really tough one, because people
Right,
want to know.
and people are curious. Yeah,
They're
why
nosy.
didn't
But
their
is
marriage?
it a turn off to be able to cross those kind of boundaries after the first date? Would you say that if he did this on the first date, what would be the second and the third?
I just think you don't need to give people necessarily more information than they need at this point, because like Erica was saying, people take a little bit of information and they run their minds. Our minds just run with it, because we don't want to be off guard. We don't want to feel unsafe. So we naturally think, oh, well, they must have cheated on their wife because she's seemed lovely, and why else would they have left 3 kids, and and he's so good looking, he must have cheated, and so you just that's just what we all do. We make assumptions and we run with it. So you don't need to share really personal information. You still want to keep it on the second date light and happy and positive.
I'd add a little bit different spin on that as well too. If you're going to say something about a past relationship or a husband or wife, spouse, I would couch it in frames of, well, we don't need to go into details, but you know, if you can say that you're grateful about something, or they're a good person, or it's
Or what you
resolved,
learned, yeah.
or
Yeah, what
yeah,
you
it was
learned,
a
that's
tremendous
correct.
lesson for me, and I learned a lot of great things. I wish them well, you know, but I realize I'm in a different place now, and so you don't need to go into details, but I think it really speaks volumes about the character of the person. If you can say you're in a really good place now afterward, and like you're kind of resolved, and that says, oh, okay, great.
He's past it.
Past it, and they're ready
Right.
to go to the next level, and I think that's a huge thing. I think character is the #1 thing you're going to look for in a date, and if it's not, it should be. I really do recommend that, because you know, all those other things like handsome doesn't always last, you know, pretty, slim doesn't always last, lots of great looking hair doesn't always last. Believe me, I know. So you know, those are the things that aren't necessarily things you want to, you know, bet on long term, but character is something that's really important.
Now, you're mentioning something on your website about the polarity principle.
Yeah.
Can you please elaborate? That really is an interesting concept.
Well, it's about what I was talking about earlier. It's about masculine and feminine and understanding how they work. Polarity is really the attraction between two opposite forces, so masculine and feminine. When they're out here, when masculine is in masculine and feminine is in feminine, there's attraction a lot of times if there's a connection, if there's chemistry. But the challenge when relationships run into trouble is when they start to go inward. So rather, like if masculine starts to go feminine, starts to be pleasing, or you know, kind of like wishy-washy and not a leader and not stepping up, you know, feminine doesn't like that, and there's no, then she starts to come in and go towards masculine, and then there's no connection there at that point. So it's really about helping understand where good, healthy masculine is, you know, strong, decisive, knows who he is, knows what he wants, and you know, is pretty clear on his path, and he's on his way to building something. And whereas feminine is, she feels safe, she's in a good space, you know, she life looks good to her, and she's nurturing, she's kind, she develops relationships, and those are all really good essences of the two energies. And so those are just great places to be, and that's why I say the gratitude thing. You know, if you understand those spaces and you're there, you have a much higher chance of attraction and having those sparks and that sizzle that connect. So that's just, you know, kind of understanding it and sort of reverse engineering the process.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, Erica, you were talking about the online profiles and when people meet online, and how long would you say is standard, or I would say probably more appealing for a couple, not a couple, but some people who meet online, how long will it take for them to be able to meet in person? Would you say after 2 or 3 days of interaction, a week, 2 weeks, a month? I mean, sometimes people waste so many times or so many days online and they never really meet.
I can't say what's standard. I can say what I recommend. So I recommend, if you write to somebody and he or she writes back, try to have the date lined up within a week, or no more than 3 back and forth emails, because like you said, people can waste so much time. And I do say waste. I'm using that word consciously, because if you meet sooner and you enjoy each other's company, great, you've met sooner. And if you meet sooner and you don't, great, you know, because kind of like what Tammy was saying, but in a different context, we have all of these things we build up in our head. You know, if someone says something funny, we have now created this image of the person in our head and what he or she is going to be like. And reality is often very different from virtual. So I tell my clients to meet as quickly as they can. I believe it's more than appropriate to, let's say a male emails female, she writes back, she's interested enough to meet him. So I tell my male clients, if they ask her out in the next email, she's 80% likely to say yes. And if she doesn't, she may not have said yes anyway, so you've dodged a bullet.
But when it comes to and as you know, with online dating, we have one guy that will email 100 women. It's basically just kind of throwing the dart, and wherever it hits the target.
Great.
So isn't there like some kind of a danger for women to put themselves out there so quickly without really knowing the person or the background of that person?
I think that's how rumors start. No, I mean, be safe, you know, use your common sense, meet in a public place, you know, if it makes you feel more comfortable, tell someone where you're going, but it is important to have that one exchange, right? So you know this person is a person, right? Has a first name, you know, signed Steve, signed Bob, whatever. But then just use your common sense. I encourage people to email as many people as they can online because ultimately it's a numbers game. If your average response rate is going to be 20% online, I'd rather you get 4 out of 20 responses than 2 out of 10, right? So I encourage casting a very wide net, not writing the same email to everyone because no one's answering that. But then I go with innocent until proven guilty. Like a lot of people think online equals scary, online equals this, equals, you know, the supermarket, you can meet someone scary, the bus. I say it's innocent. So you just use your common sense. There are no more creepy people online than there are outside this studio, right? So just go with it. Know yourself well enough to know that if you get a strange vibe, you don't have to be there. And that's it. So I would not go in under the assumption that this person is going to be bad or scary or creepy. I would go in under the assumption that they're going to be like you, just a person looking to meet someone.
Okay, good point.
I think a good key also to follow up on what you were saying is if they have some kind of a personal connection to what you wrote, like if you, in your example, if you say, I like puns, and he leads off with a pun, it's like, connection. So like if you actually read it or mention it in passing, like that means it's not just, wow, you look hot, what are you doing Thursday? You look hot, what do you do? Like
no one's answering those anyway. So.
Right. So that's just kind of lame and you know, that whole wide net that you're talking about, but if it shows that someone has paid attention.
So true. Yeah. Now, if someone is casting that wide net and sending the generic message, a lot of my clients ask me what to do. Because they'll say, this message is terrible, I know it was sent to everyone else, but this person's profile is kind of nice. I have them write back, this is the little trick I give them. Thanks so much for writing, I'm curious to hear what piqued your interest about my profile, right? Then they can write back, and they already have their in, and if they've read it this time, they can answer something specific, and if they haven't or don't want to, they don't have to.
Well, that's a very good point, actually.
Thanks.
Good tool.
Very good.
Now, as we all know, in the United States, we have like 50% divorce. It's rampant. And a lot of couples that do divorce, some of them do have children, and some others do not. Now, Tammy, what is the timeline before, let's say, you feel that you're getting along with someone that you met online, and you have children or they have children? What would you say that is a good time to introduce the kids to the potential partner?
I don't have an exact timeline, but I do feel that the relationship should be at a point where it's a committed relationship, where it's exclusive, there's been consistency. I'd say, I would say a minimum of 6 months. I'm pretty conservative when it comes to introducing your family, because if you're introducing your kids, you know, they can form an attachment, and they've already been through one divorce or maybe more, and you want to be very careful. You want to make sure this is a person that really has a long-term potential. You don't have to definitely know that you're going to spend the rest of your life with them, but you want to feel pretty confident that, you know, there's a strong likelihood this could be a life partner before introducing your kids. I don't think they should meet every single person that you've dated for a month or two, especially if you're a big dater. I think it should be very special and very, you know, just be very cautious, because the kids need to know they're number one in your life, and it should not be a revolving door. And so, you know, people are quick to like push the process and let's introduce the kids and let's all go to dinner together. And I think that's a big mistake. So, you know, I guess I would just say that to make sure it's been a minimum of 6 months, but that it's exclusive, committed, and, you know, you've talked about future goals together. You've talked about possibly, you know, blending your life and you see things going long term.
Do you feel it's easier if both couple or both parents have children, so both are taking the risk to introduce the other person versus only one having kid and then the other person not having kids, so you're taking more risk because you have your children to introduce to the other person? So if both people, both parents have kids and they introduce everyone together, do you think that kind of like a shared risk?
Are you talking about introducing everyone at the same time?
Yes.
I think that's one way to do it because it's less threatening. Do it in a neutral territory.
Like play date.
Don't go to each other's house. So I think that can work well, and hopefully do an activity because that takes off the pressure and the tension. So, you know, whether you're going to like bowling or doing an activity, so then everybody can relax a little bit, and the focus is not on, oh, do I like him? Do I like her? It's more about, oh, did you see I scored a strike? You know, so that's important, and do it gradually. Don't force them to all meet and meet like 3 times in the first week. That's your time. That's the parents' timeline. They need to think about what's in the best interest of the children.
Okay.
Always.
You share the same.
Yes, pretty much so. And I would just add one slight distinction. I think age is a little bit of an issue. I think you would probably be a little bit more on the cautious side with a younger child. And, you know, as someone gets older, maybe it's what's going to be okay is a little bit more flexible. But I think the other thing that I would add,
they're teenagers.
well, they're probably not going
Trust
to.
me.
They're not going to show up anyway.
Okay,
Yes,
They
I
won't want
speak
to
they
from
will not show up,
personal
you're right.
experience.
they won't be with you actually, probably, because they're sort of becoming more independent and doing things on their own, I guess. But I was going to say the other. Oh man, I lost my
Go
train of
check.
thought there. I just derailed that.
About couples introducing
I was
kids.
going to say that the important thing to remember also is that kids learn to love by the example that their parents give them. It's, again, especially towards a younger child. So if, like you said, I think you mentioned, it's like if it's like a revolving door kind of thing, that's not going to be healthy and a great example. So you just want to be mindful of that. And you're right. You wait until it's pretty steady and you both are in a good place. You both are interested in going forward, and you're both interested in bringing, you know, your kids forward, and let's see how this works out. But you're committed to doing it as well.
I just want to.
Yeah. Oh.
You were alluding before to something that I don't agree with, saying that if you both have children, maybe it's easier because you're putting the
Right.
same risk on the table. I don't agree with that because risk is subjective, right? What's risk? So is it your children? Is it your own background? What's happened to you? I don't think both having children, both not having children makes anything easier. Every relationship is different on its own, you know, timeline. So
And every kid is different, too.
and every
yeah.
kid is different. So I would say don't use your kids to equal risk. I mean, risk is your heart, risk is everything. So it's so I wouldn't agree that both sides having children would make anything easier. It just makes it different.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good
Agreed.
point. You were about to say something, Tammy?
I forgot. And I agree with Erica. I do think it helps when 2 people are on a similar life stage.
That stage, yeah.
It doesn't mean it's a guarantee you're going to hit it off, or it doesn't mean just because someone doesn't have kids and you have kids that it's going to be an issue. So I think you have to be open-minded, but I do think your life stage can help only because you can connect on different levels. You can relate and empathize with each other.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question, Dave, actually. When
sir.
it comes to mistakes, as we all know, no women or no men are perfect. Okay, I
Right.
think we all agree upon that. Now, what are the most common mistakes that women do with men when it comes to interacting with them? In the dating
I'm excited to
environment,
hear
that
what he
is.
has to say.
Yeah, that we could go for 3 hours like that.
There are plenty of, how much time
And then
do
we
we
can
have?
reverse it
And then we
too.
can reverse that, exactly.
I would say one of the number one things that I see is about understanding that masculine and feminine as well. An important value or an important need for masculine is freedom, the concept of freedom and being independent. And so feminine's need for safety is a direct conflict to a masculine's need for freedom. So, like, I'm sure you get calls from your clients all the time. I had a date, or I just left him an hour ago and he hasn't texted. I don't know if we're going to see one
Don't even
another.
get me started.
What does it mean? And so that's the area that I see. It's that need for certainty, that need for safety, that need for, I know where this is going, that, you know, that looks like neediness to a man who wants to be free and independent, who is not ready to be tied down, you know, as soon as he sent you one email or had one coffee with you. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't think you were terrific, and it doesn't mean he doesn't want to see you again, but I think it looks like needy. And understand that men are more again, they need that freedom, and they're also single-focused. And single-focused means they're going to go and they're probably put their full attention on their work or their kids or whatever they're doing at the time they're doing it. So that means if it's Wednesday night and you don't know if you're going to get together on Friday, he might be very focused on work. And he might not even think about that until Thursday night. Now that may be a little bit late notice for someone, and a great learning would be, oh, I'm sorry, I wish you'd asked me sooner. I'm already booked on Friday, I can't do that. Now he learns.
Even though you're not booked.
No, I'm not suggesting you play games.
No.
Okay.
I'm saying, but I wouldn't. What I'm saying is, don't sit by the phone waiting for him either. And so you're educating one another, and it's like it's about both people being in a good place and going out and living their lives, not hanging on, what does this mean? So I think it's that tendency to like latch on, and it's like if you think about it this way, if you're walking down the street and someone grabs your arm like that, your first tendency is going to be to pull it away because you don't want anyone grabbing you. Oh, sorry. So the point is, it's like no one wants to be grabbed too soon or like getting your hooks in them, and I think that's just a mistake, and I think it telegraphs just some unappealing messages about who you are. So I think that's an area where it's like, you know what, be calm, know your value, know you're a catch, and he'll get to you if he's interested. Yeah.
I think it comes often from a place of anxiety. It's especially for women. They want to know, like, does he like me? Why isn't he called? Oh my goodness, I haven't heard from him. It's been a few days. And so unfortunately, they text and they text, or you know what I mean? And that again can be a turn off. So it's a learning process to just stay calm, like you said, manage your anxiety, not put all your focus in this one person who you just met one time. So maybe you're dating several people, or maybe you're doing other things that make you happy in your life, and it's not all about dating. That's one piece of your life. Right. So I think the calmer we are, the more self-confident we are, the better, we'll attract somebody, because they'll sense that.
But it's also based on past relationship as well. I mean, it depends on how the previous boyfriend, if they've hurt you in a way that lowered your self-esteem, or it created more insecurity. So how can they pass that part and then not feel the same insecurity in the new date or the new relationship?
Well,
so
I think work you have to do on yourself before
that's what we do.
That's therapy. Therapy.
Exactly.
That's where people, if they start carrying baggage or issues from past relationships, which most people have, if not all of us, it's getting yourself into a good place and giving yourself that time, so that when you meet the right person, you're bringing your best self forward.
Now, you were talking about like red flags.
Yes.
When you go on a date and all, what would you say? What are the red flags that someone has to be careful about when you meet the person the first time around?
Well, red flags would be, do they have a steady job? I mean, it depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for stability and somebody said, well, I had 3 jobs in the past year, or, I'm not really working, I'm kind of just, I mean, if stability is your, a priority, well then ding, ding, ding. If financial stability is not important because maybe you're financially stable, and you want to know if somebody's a good parent, and why don't they ever see their children? Why is 6 months gone by and they haven't seen their children? If that's important to you. So you have to figure out what is important to you, and then you look for the red flags. Like if somebody is a recovering, alcoholic, and you don't want that, well then you need to pay attention to that. If you're concerned about that. If somebody's saying, I went to an AA meeting, obviously that's not a bad thing, that's wonderful. It's lovely. They're getting help for themselves. But if you're a drinker and you want to be able to drink and socialize, and that's a big part of your lifestyle, again, it's not a red flag for them, it's wonderful. But for you, it could be a red flag. So, the red flags are personal. But we do criminal and credit background checks for that reason, the Match Pro. So again, it's what's important to you. But I mean, across the board, you do want to look at stability, and you want to look
mental stability, especially
mental stability.
That one's harder.
Yeah,
yes.
It's hard to gauge in the beginning, but you want to look at how is this person functioning in their life, high functioning. Do they have consistency in their life? Do they have regular job? How long have they lived in the same place? Do they see, do they have a support system? So you want to look at various aspects of their life. And again, nothing's a guarantee, But when something's, and how do they present themselves? Do they take good care of themselves? Do they have good hygiene? I mean, that, is how do they present themselves? Do they take pride in themselves? Do they have interests? So, or are they just kind of, sitting home all the time? I mean, so it's, again, there's no definites, but it's, again, what's important to you and how is this person functioning generally? Did they roll out of bed 12 o'clock every day? That's a little bit of a red flag.
Maybe, maybe not.
Now,
Maybe, maybe not.
Have you guys come across any time where a person have a checklist so long about what are the red flags for them? I mean, for them, like you said, what's most important to like financial stability or anything else. But
right,
for them, they
sometimes
to go
people
through a
have
whole
too
list.
many red flags and you're not going to find anyone to date.
Exactly.
Because they'll say, oh, well, he doesn't make $500,000 a year and
yeah.
he's not 6 foot tall and he's kind of balding and that's a red flag. So, you got to be careful with your
flexible.
red flags.
Absolutely
Flexibility because, somebody could think everything's a red flag and you'll never be with anybody. You'll never find that person.
I also want to even take it a step back further. I mean, how does this person, besides present themselves, are they rude? I've been on dates where this person is rude to the server. That's a red flag. The person's late without apologizing. That's a red flag because it shows they don't value my time. So even before if you want stability, I think I loved all of the points you said, even at its more basic level. How does this person treat people, myself or you included?
Do they listen to you? Do they ask
listen?
questions?
Exactly.
Or do they cut you off and go right on to the,
Talking
their
about
show?
themselves,
Right. Or are they on their cell phone?
Yes.
Oh,
You know,
God,
I
biggest
mean-
no-no. Put
Right.
that cell phone away.
Right, that's a turn off.
Yeah.
Does anyone here in the crowd has any red flags that they want to share with us? Get closer to the mic.
Not a red flag. That said, how long after a good first date do you recommend call or text? Because now, the social aspect of the reconnection has sort of evaporated. People don't want to talk on the phone when, where, how, but really I'm curious about what your thoughts are about that.
How quickly should they text or call? Or
Text,
just
quickly should you
well, I mean,
text?
nobody seems to want to either want to talk on the phone or have time to talk on the
I
phone.
think that's an assumption, first of all, because a lot of people still want to talk on the phone, and they're accepting the text message when they shouldn't be. They should be saying, I prefer a phone call, regardless.
Well, I'm saying this is my experience.
I think 20-year-olds are still texting. I think older people, especially women over 40, appreciate the phone call. But I think if you had a good first date, you should let them know. It's important to let them know within a day or even sooner. Just to say, I had a great time. I'd love to see you again. Let me know what your what your availability is like over the next week. I don't think I think a phone call is also fine. I mean, because I think it's a little more personal. I mean, the texting can just drive, I don't know, some people nuts. So I think if it was a good first date and you felt like you had a connection, I don't think there's a reason to wait several days because I think that'll give somebody a clue like, I'm not sure he's that into me. So I think if you felt it went well, definitely I'd say within a day at the most. I would not go over 24 hours.
There was a study, I think it was done by Match.com, I can't remember offhand, where they measured the time between first date and follow-up, and it used to be the 3-day rule. They calculated that it was 1.52 days. I don't know how they calculated how many people they looked at, but I completely agree with everything Tammy said. If you're interested in someone, show it. We're adults. Who has time to wait that extra day? And if they're not interested, better to know sooner.
Right, then you can move on. Next.
Not you next, I mean.
Yeah.
I love the phone call idea, but I'm saying that my personal experience is that people, I'll call them and they'll respond by text.
That's rude.
Right.
I
Tell my
agree.
clients
But
they
that
have to
tells you
respond.
something.
The
Sure
same way
does.
that they were communicated
I
with.
tell them they have to respond the same way they were communicated. However, one of my favorite pieces of advice is you get what you allow. So if as a woman you don't want text, you want a phone call, but you're accepting the text, that's what you get, right? So to err on the safe side, honestly, I would tell you, Jay, send her a text saying, I had a great time. I'll call you tomorrow to arrange some new plans. And then you've done everything, and you're a man of your word when you call. That will not go wrong.
I have a question. I've run into a lot of frustration with men that so many of them want to go to email or texting immediately. And I don't want to do that. When I have done it, it goes nowhere. It dwindles out. And I would like to talk on the phone. And I've never had a problem with talking on the phone first and not having a lot to talk about during the first date. So when I say to the man, I would prefer to talk on the telephone, most of them disappear.
Yes,
Well, then they're not for you.
they would.
I agree.
Because men don't, as I said earlier about the conversation, if you ask a man how his day was and he says fine, that's a perfectly complete conversation.
That makes me want to pull my hair out and scream if a man says that.
How do you think the man would feel if you insist that he gets on the phone and talks to you?
I don't
if he
insist,
doesn't
I
want to?
request.
Yes.
But I don't know how to continue corresponding with a man who only wants to go to email and texting.
What if you suggested meeting instead?
Oh, that's an idea.
Yeah. So I'll do you one up. How about we meet for a coffee next week? I call texting the death of the first date because inevitably someone screws something up over text. Right? Someone says something by accident that's offensive, or this, that, the other. They beat around the bush. They don't schedule it. So get to the date. If that's the pinnacle, then all the stuff is just extra.
Right.
See how that works.
I would caution you also. Again, when I'm talking about masculine and feminine energy, you're a woman. If you're pursuing, that makes you the hunter now. So now you're kind of in the opposite
I
energy,
know.
and that's a turnoff to men. You should know. So you don't want to go to that place, and especially if you want a really grounded, good guy who's got like good things going on in his
Well,
life.
she suggested I say that's me.
You can
I
offer
do
that.
suggest that,
You can
and that's
offer
where I
it.
disagree a little bit, because I do recommend that men, women, I don't care if you're going same sex, opposite sex, whatever, whoever you are, reach out first if you find someone you like. I don't think that offsets masculine, feminine energy, everything you're talking about. It's just going for what you want. So in this case, he's asking you to change to email because he thinks that's what you want. He doesn't know. And if you say, that sounds great, or if you're interested, we could just meet for a coffee to get to know each other, that's not aggressive. That's just being assertive and saying what you want.
No, especially if you couple it, says, well, if you sounds like you don't really have time for emails, why don't we just meet for a coffee? Like that's so it's responsive to what you know from him, and it's a bit of it's a pivot, if you will. That's probably good, and I think that's a safe way to do it. And it also presupposes that you're open to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's good. But as long as you're not aggressively going for it, if you're kind of like creating a space to allow it,
Yeah.
rather than driving it.
Absolutely. I'd love to continue talking to you, maybe even over a coffee.
Oh yes, I would like
Yeah,
that.
write that one down. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
We can take the last question before the break.
Sure. Hi again.
Hi.
I just wanted to address or ask the question about red flags, returning to that, and the whole concept of checklists and red flags, and even your assumption about masculine and feminine energy. People are complex.
Yes.
You know, especially those of us who are on our second go round or who are later in life. I use the analogy, we're used cars. You know, you're not going to find something that doesn't have a few scratches and dents in it. And if you're looking for a new car, you're in the wrong market. And so what I'm asking you, rather than have a list of red flags, doesn't it pay to humanize the person? Doesn't it pay to treat them, or in my case, her, like a woman, and have her treat me as a man, but even more broadly, as a human being? And say, I want to get to know you. I want to know what's good about you, what I like about you, what you like about me. We can talk about dating later, but let's find out, do we even have something to talk about?
Yeah. That's a great point. And in fact, to your point, one of the things that I do is kind of a game changer on a first date is I give my clients an assignment. And the assignment is, I don't want you to be worried about how it's going to go. I want you to go on this date, and I want you to pick out 3 to 5 things that you like respect, appreciate, acknowledge, or notice about that human sitting across the table. And I want you to reflect them back. If they say, you know, I started my own business, wow, you started your own business. That's really impressive. I've always admired someone who can do that. Or if you say, you know, my hobby is scuba diving. Wow, scuba diving sounds like something that I'd love to do too. That must be really fascinating, or whatever. So you're reflecting back. And my rule of thumb is, like, if you assumed by talking about sort of assessment tools that I was opting people out, that was not what I meant at all. I want to opt people in, and my thing is you meet people where they are and you always leave them better than you found them. And that's it. That means you leave them 3 to 5 compliments. And like, I think at the end of a date, if you think you're pretty sure that you don't want to see them, you don't think you need to leave people sitting in ambiguity for a long time.
Right.
You could say, you know what, I think you're terrific. I don't necessarily see a match here, but I know you're going to find it because these are the things that I see about you, this specifically, this specifically, this specifically, and you leave them better. And that's just good dating karma. So, you know, I just wanted to clean that up with you and make sure that I wasn't sounding like I was too negative, because I'm not at all. I'm not about that. So
Well,
thanks for clarifying.
Thank you. I mean, we already went through the first part of the show, so we're going to continue. Now we're going to go to part 2 to the seminar, and we'll discuss a little bit more about online dating, the dating scams that are happening, and I'm sure that many of you have seen them before or have experienced them probably. So we're going to at least kind of cover that subject, which is one of the main subjects that's why people are afraid to go online.
Awesome.
All right.
Very good.